Michael loves to keep in the part where we're just like getting coffee.
No.
I mean, I think it's nice. We are like, we're not a podcast. We're a friend simulator.
Oh God.
You know, we're a social life simulator for the lonely people doing their dishes.
Does anyone want any fancy?
Because we certainly don't contribute anything
Mess up my taco.
to anyone.
I'll leave it out.
Like, what if I have it, like, put it on the taco in front of you? What is it?
My mom got me a 4-pack.
Tarte au citron.
Oh, Tarte's good. Tarte's fancy. That is his fancy hand lotion.
It is. My mom got me a 4-pack of Laura Mercier lotions, and they all smell like really good desserts.
It smells like Rich Lady.
So I need to use it.
Margie, did you see the story about global wildlife in The Advocate?
I couldn't continue reading it because it made me so sad because
It is-
global wildlife is such a part of my youth.
Right. No. Yeah. So, do you know what global wildlife is?
I haven't been there, but I know what it is.
So you basically like feed giraffes out of a Mardi Gras cup
giant
full
Mardi
of
Gras cup.
dog food. Like that's like the thing.
That
You're
is
like,
what it is.
You ride around in like a like one of those Mardi Gras truck floats, and you feed giraffes. Yeah, and then like
You make the giraffes,
and
they got to show you their tits,
Right,
and then you
exactly.
give them,
and you know,
dog food.
and they're like, hey, like the camels hate everyone and will spit. If they spit at you, it's not personal. They just are depressed or whatever. You know, it's just like anyway. So, Mark, you might have to do
just
earmuffs for
picturing
some of this
you,
because I'm going to read some of the excerpts.
Well, I just
Trying to
think
get camels
you're
to
gonna
take
read them.
Wellbutrin.
My question is like how we didn't. Like, I feel like I could have written this article without knowing.
I haven't
Right.
read the article yet.
Yeah. So I'll read some excerpts, but
It's abusive, and I'm like, we could have just like improvised that article, and it's the same thing.
the guy who runs it donated to the Trump campaign in 2016, which he did get elected, but also everyone who donated to that campaign is a fucking rube and an idiot because there's no way it was going to happen, but it did. But there's no way it was going to happen.
It's not like they were like really good speculators,
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
right? Like they took a risk that like no one thought was going to be rewarded. And
Also,
they
his
weren't
whole thing was
smarter.
like, I'm a billionaire. Like, I'm very rich.
Right.
And then,
Yeah. Okay. So, this is, I don't know, maybe 300 words that I excerpted. The Global Wildlife Center near Folsom, Louisiana seems like an animal paradise. Deers, giraffes, zebras, and camels wander freely over 900 acres of as visitors hand feed exotic creatures from wagons that crisscross the park on daily tours. But beneath the idyllic surface of the popular tourist destination, there's a grimmer reality, according to many former employees.
They're fucking the animals.
They say that animals are frequently injured by the tractor-pulled wagons that bring visitors eye to eye with wildlife, and when animals are hit or run over, a common occurrence, according to more than a dozen ex-workers, the protocol is to either leave them in hopes that they will recover on their own, or to euthanize them with a hammer, bat, or gun. If it's a herd animal, they say, we'll call the vet out, said Jeremy Buisson, an ex-employee. 9 times out of 10, the vet's either a hammer or a .22 caliber rifle.
Oh my God.
Hammerbat gun is a way
Margie,
meaner
are you
version
okay?
of rock, paper,
I'm
scissors.
upset, like I'm upset, and also, yeah, I'm okay, thank you. Like it doesn't even make sense as far as I'm so sorry to do this. I think it's because I've been thinking about economics of things a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like, why would you buy like an $800 zebra and then just be like, oh, its leg
Let's
is
just
broken,
kill it.
shoot it?
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna ride it in a race. It doesn't have to never have had a fracture.
Right. Yeah, that makes no sense.
Unless they do ride them in races.
Former workers say that vet visits were rare, and an IRS report from 2016 shows that only $168 was spent on veterinary.
Oh my God, I spend more on my cats every time we go to the vet. That's just food. They're just buying food at the vet.
That would be funny if they
$800
did
on
race
that
them
boat.
and they made the jockeys wear paint stripes.
After
Conflicting stripes.
after animal accidents, employees were instructed to tell worried visitors that a vet was on the way. The vet has never been on his way, said Russell, who was worked at the park for.
This is actually really sad.
It's so
I know.
sad. I know, but the guy that's like giving the interview has some good comedic timing. He's like, oh, the vet is on his way. The vet's a bat or a hammer. Like he's not. He's like definitely doing some.
He's
reveals.
doing like Ron Howard on Arrested Development. Like the vet was not on its way.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. Animals with less serious injuries that could have been treated with medicine, such as a split ear or bite, usually didn't get any attention, Elsie said. Resources were never allocated, he said. It would turn into a fester, and that animal would come up to a tour, a zebra with pus coming out of its ear leaning sideways. This guy should be a comedian. Let's see.
Elsie and his wife, Sarah.
Yeah. I'm going to skip that.
You're gonna skip the thing about the vigil for a baby giraffe.
Elsie and his wife Sarah said workers who were not trained in medical care would spend the night with ailing animals on a voluntary basis, such as the baby giraffe that they watched over in a 72-hour vigil before the baby died. Let's see. Oh, yeah, and then, and in a twist that seems to run counter to the pro-conservation image Global Wildlife promotes, the employees say that Matern routinely sells deer to hunting camps. Sales of inventory brought in $1.5 million in 2017, according to the nonprofit's tax form, although the documents do not give details about what that inventory was. I could not bear to excerpt any of the stuff about sexual harassment because the dude is a fucking monster.
Well, the last one, you did excerpt one.
Well, just one. I mean, that's not even...
Yeah.
I stopped.
For Christmas each year, all females were required to line up. Also, it's weird because we've been talking about animals, so at first I was imagining a bunch of female giraffes. I was like, what?
All the emails.
The Christmas bonus is just one strawberry.
The Christmas bonus is a vet checkup. For Christmas each year, all females were required to line up and kiss him on the mouth to receive their Christmas bonus. Sarah Elsie wrote.
What?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was like at the beginning of the article, and then as it got, it was
This
just
guy's
worse
Catholic
and worse and
for
worse.
sure.
When I was at the bar last night with the person who tipped me off to this, and
Is the
What's that
podcast
noise?
picking up this?
It's picking up
It
that
is.
is a weed whacker. for
yeah, it's a
sure.
weed whacker.
Oh, God, I was so confused.
Yeah.
I'm really hungover,
It
and
actually
I hate
sounds-
noises.
Like if I were a Foley artist and I needed,
It's someone
weed whacker
revving a
sound?
chainsaw at the fucking Global Wildlife Center, just chasing the animals.
It's so much better. I'm taking the headphones off for the weed whacker. It was horrible with the headphones on. Sorry. It's over now.
I think it's over now.
Okay.
For now. But anyway, at the bar last night, somebody told me about this story, and he was reading it on his phone, and he was like, "This is worse than Harvey Weinstein. This is worse than 9/11. It's just really, really, really.
I don't know about that,
really,
but
really
it's bad.
Yeah.
No, but the sexual harassment stuff that we don't know.
Right. And then there's also all sorts of obviously fucked up financial stuff. He runs the nonprofit, but he also owns the company that owns the property, and then he rents the property for millions of dollars a year to the nonprofit. So it's just basically, yeah.
this is okay.
Yes,
Can I still
done.
use this
Yeah, of
fancy
course.
lotion?
Yes, please.
Anyway, I just thought that was.
The time has come. The time closed.
It's fast.
I thought our listeners might want to know about Global Wildlife.
I'm
Yeah.
concerned. So they're a non-profit?
Yes, and they pull in I think $2.7 million a year. $1.5 million is rent that he pays to himself.
So, can anything be a nonprofit if you just I don't understand how.
Dude,
how
the
does,
NFL's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
How?
Anything can be.
You have to. So I've done the paperwork. You have to prove a mission. But I mean, I haven't read this, but I would assume that with the NFL, the mission is the preservation of an American pastime, right? So you could creatively. This on paper, having a wildlife sanctuary, oh cool, yeah, that probably should be a nonprofit.
But you're allowed to make a lot of money.
Yeah,
Well, and
you
this
can
place-
you can make money. You just have to reinvest it in the mission and the organization. So the only difference is that shareholders of a company of a nonprofit can't be incentivized for
Right.
the success of that.
But it could be
organization.
but you could be proven to be in violation of that if you were selling deer. Wait, what would he do?
Well, no. So basically,
If you were renting
the mission,
deer to get shot in the face.
yeah.
ostensibly the mission is education. So I guess selling deer to hunters.
So they're learning how the deer die.
Yeah.
Right. It's all part of it.
It's the circle
gotta
of
learn
life.
where to
It's
shoot.
basically the Lion King.
Honestly, that's probably not a violation.
Yeah.
Of nonprofit
Yeah.
of nonprofit rules. Like selling off a surplus, right? In this situation is just really rough because the surplus is animals that they said they would protect.
Right. Oh God.
So that was Margee Green, who's running for
Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry. For the state of
Defending Global
Louisiana.
Wildlife.
Tell us what the
Oh,
commissioner.
Lord.
No, tell us
On
what
the record.
The only thing that all Louisianans are united about right now is anti-global wildlife.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go
Margee
ahead.
Green is running for Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry. What is that?
Thank you for asking. So, the Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry is it's a executive level position in the state, and its essential function is just the overseeing and advancement of all of the natural resources of the state of Louisiana. So,
Okay.
agricultural and forestry. Now, the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries handles. So a lot of people have been like, oh, cool. So you would handle oyster reefs, and that would be wildlife and fisheries. But yeah, it's essentially like all terrestrial, growing, moving water, that kind of stuff within the state. So it's a huge position.
Who's running it now?
Right now, it's a man named Mike Strain. He's a Republican. He has been our Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry for 8 years. This would be his third term. It's not a term-limited position. Yeah, and actually, weirdly enough, it's only 14 states. It's an elected position. Everywhere else, it's actually, like
And appointed.
Is it appointed by the governor most of the time?
Yeah, it's appointed by the governor. So I was a friend, or a work colleague became the commissioner for Colorado, and I was like, oh great, she'll be able to tell me like what her path to victory was. And then I looked it up, and it's just southern states really where it's elected, not appointed. And that's
okay.
Obviously there's a reason for that. So.
And like on the ballot, is it people listed under their party? So like straight ticket voters, is that how it generally happens?
Yeah, it generally happens straight ticket voters. It generally happens that people stay in the office for a really long time. So like famously Bob Odom, who was Democrat, was before Mike Strain, and he was there for like 24 years or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I might be exaggerating, but people like sit in this position. So we haven't had many in our lifetimes. Probably most of the people at this table, it's only been Bob Odom and Mike Strain.
Do they usually like run unopposed, or do people run against them usually?
Generally, there is like an underdog that runs against them that doesn't even get like a large percentage of the vote.
Right.
I think so there's actually another Democrat running who got 30% of the vote last time because it was basically him and Strain. There's always like an independent who runs and gets like 1% of the vote.
Right.
Like pretty consistently, there's like a person who maybe doesn't even like officially start a campaign, but it's just like, I'm gonna put my name on there.
I'm picturing just sort of like a forest dweller who comes out like once every 4 years to be like, can I be the king of the forest?
Yeah, that's like kind of how I think that what happens like is that it gets close to the time where people should be announcing, and like because it's kind of an unusual position, it's like really high ranking but not really like watched well, that people are like, oh, no one's announcing, like I'm gonna announce, and it kind of all happens at the same time.
Right.
And so there's always like somebody in like Opelousas who thought that they were just gonna be like the only Democrat or whatever, and they like announce, and then they're like, oh, okay, well I guess they won't like take my name off the ballot, like they just like get their name on the ballot, and then they're just like, I'm just gonna see what happens and see how this plays out.
So is the other Democrat running's platform much different than Mike Strain, how he's been doing it forever?
No, it's not much different. The thing that the other Democrat is doing is really looking at like refunding a lot of departments. So there's been a lot of like defunding of departments in the time that Mike Strain's been in the office, and the other Democrat, he was an employee of the office, and so like actually felt some of those budget cuts, and his platform is really just like refunding some stuff and making medical cannabis a little bit easier to access, and that's kind of the gist of it.
And your platform is recreational cannabis.
Yeah, so we're actually using the word adult, as of like yesterday, we're using the word adult access to cannabis, because we realized that when I was talking about recreational, people just are immediately like, oh, so you like to party.
I love to recreate.
You like to give kids drugs.
Yeah. So we're doing adult access to cannabis, and that's like kind of, I guess, a strategy.
See, that just sounds sexy to me, because the word adult sounds
dirty.
sexy.
Yeah. Everybody's like, recreational sounds dirty. And
It's like you're going to put the cannabis in your pussy?
Sounds dirty.
That's a thing now. though.
Adult
I know,
video
I've
stores,
read about
like weed
that.
lube.
adult video stores used to be called recreational video stores, and people were very confused.
Wait,
They
really?
thought it was just
No,
for fun.
I'm too gullible. I don't understand how I do comedy. I don't understand any jokes. I'm like, that could be true.
Recreational video stores, it's all just like people like jet skiing. Videos of jet skiing.
Like those vented
That was-
fishing shirts.
Yes.
Make
sportsman's
sure
clothing.
that you please be kind and rewind this tape of someone hacky sacking.
Yeah, like because it's like really hard
Badly.
to tell if you're at the beginning or the end, so you have to rewind.
Did you ever go to the Port Allen porn store? We used to get our pipes there.
Oh wow!
But we bought
I
a
know where you're
vibrator there.
talking
Yeah,
about.
we bought a vibrator there for our friend who was mean for her birthday.
Were you trying to make her nice?
Yes. That's why I included that detail.
Yeah.
But we usually just bought pipes there because they had cheap pipes, and the raw shop was like 30 times more
Yeah, it
expensive.
was extortion.
Yeah. Anyway, but there was
That's where my anti-monopoly stance was solidified. Was the raw shop.
the least beautiful woman I've ever seen, who was beautiful on the inside, worked there.
That wasn't beautiful or was beautiful on the inside?
She was beautiful on the inside. I loved her.
Exteriorly, however.
Yeah, she knew so much about the products and was so excited someone actually wanted to buy a sex toy and helped us so much. Anyway, I was just thinking of the Port Allen. Everyone just called it the Port Allen porn store, like the least sexy thing you've ever heard. I love that place.
But it's like utilitarian. It gets the job done.
Yes,
like, why name it
exactly.
something fancy? Like
right. I think it might have had a porny store name, but everyone just called it the porn store.
I feel like I know what you're talking about. I thought it was called Loves. Am I wrong?
I think it is.
I think it's called Loves because they had like a good billboard series.
But Jordan and Jessica just
And then
always
they
called
became
it
a
the porn
gas
store.
station.
Oh, really?
Then it became the Tiger truck stop.
That's very possible. Why is it a joke that it would become a gas station?
I meant like a chain because
Loves is a gas station chain.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, so that was my fault for that joke. It was your fault the first time. This one's my fault. Go on. Yeah.
See, here's the thing too: is like a lot of the time you'll do a joke like that, and I'll just kind of look over at you puzzled, and then Mary Devin will be like, "What is this?"
Yeah. Anyway, Loves.
Anyway, no, we were talking about adult access to cannabis.
Yeah, adult access to. Am I too far back now?
Yeah, you gotta eat the mic a little bit.
Okay, here I am.
You
You
can
start
take the
talking
microphone
about
with you. No,
adult
don't do
access to
I
cannabis,
leaned
and you just fucking relax.
I relaxed
way far from
'cause
the
I am
microphone.
ready to talk about it. I'm so relaxed.
I suppose we should not we should not access ourselves to cannabis since you are running for office, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I am always. Actually, this is weird. I know that I'm going to sound like the biggest narc. I don't smoke, and like I think everyone at this table can probably verify. Like you've probably seen me around it, but I don't smoke.
She doesn't smoke, but she does inhale.
Yeah, like this is me on record being like I'm not that into weed.
Yeah.
But what I am into is like crops that farmers can grow that make them a living wage, and like the idea that this is going to be federally legal at some point, and if Louisiana doesn't like take a hold of the situation and like do something good for ourselves, then we're going to be left behind, and it's just going to be like a bunch of tourists smoking a bunch of weed from Colorado in our city limits, like when it could be Louisiana weed.
You're really giving narcs a better reputation right now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think that like whenever, I mean, you don't want to talk, right? This is a kind of a different situation, but like on a regular campaign trail, like I'm not going to go to a rally and be like, I don't smoke weed. You can trust me that this is like an economic and like moral incentive because I'm not into it.
I don't smoke
like because half of the people are going to be like, I don't believe you, and the other half of the people are going to be like, bummer, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't win anybody by being like, I don't smoke weed.
Yeah, but you kind of can because you're like, I don't smoke weed, but I'm chill.
Yeah,
like that's fine. I don't know.
I am a little bit
you
like
should smoke weed.
That's literally part of your platform.
Right. And like I'm chill and I don't smoke weed, but you can.
Right. I'm not an insane person who's afraid of marijuana.
And if you like want to, it should come from Louisiana.
Yeah.
Not because there's anything wrong with anyone else.
Yeah, because
like,
it's too expensive. An eighth is $50 and sometimes $60. We need it here. And I'm serious.
No, it's for real, though.
There shouldn't be a plane ticket or like a, like the gas to get there attached to the price.
Right, exactly. Like it's...
Like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's it.
It's just like, it's estimated at like a 1
The weed
to 2
whacker.
volume. The weed whacker.
He hates weed.
It's like your buzzer sound for weed. Like every time we start talking about cannabis, the weed whacker comes on like a morning show, like a morning show DJ. Like wow, wow.
Time for the weed whacker.
But seriously, it's estimated like a $1 to $2 billion underground industry, right? And so like honestly, if that exists and we can bring that. Like what we can achieve by bringing that up into the light is like, we tax it, we regulate it. So like our state has a budget surplus, but
Mary
also
Devin's
like,
eighth is $25.
Mary Devin's eighth is $25. Like you're welcome. But like also we can give like home grow licensure to people for a nominal fee, like because you still have to like track it, right? Like that's part of making sure this is
less
palatable
people are
to
going to
everyone.
jail.
Less people are going to jail,
Way
and
less.
you can have auto expungement of like prior offenses. And I don't think that any of this should be like talked about separately, right? Like we should be talking about like how do we do auto expungement of petty, non-violent, drug-related offenses, and also, like, how do we prioritize farmers of color? One of the things that I found out, too, is that a lot of people who are incarcerated right now aren't the people, like, a lot of the current offenses that people are incarcerated on aren't actually, like, drug-related anymore. And obviously there's, like, a system that's perpetuated that, like, that's what it goes back to, right? It goes back to, like,
the original
thing is that,
you know, weed, and then there's probation violations.
Exactly. And so then, like, it snowballs. But if you're looking at it on paper, like, a lot of those people aren't currently incarcerated. They're in diversion programs, which cost a ton of money and are pretty abusive. Like, so you know, the problem, I don't want to undersell the problem and be like, I'll be the Commissioner of Ag and Forestry, and then, like, we'll fix, like, racism and the farming and food system. But we have to start trying.
But everything is connected. And if you're going to talk, it's good that if you're going to talk about marijuana, then you have to acknowledge that that's not going to be directly under your control, but, like, you're thinking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's...
And that people, sorry to cut you off, but like people in like all sorts of offices.
Literally the second I said marijuana, the weed whacker.
I know. That's what I was going to say. It's insane.
But like, I feel like these sort of issues like get pulled away from like offices across the board, and then there's like one person in like a state house that's their like pet issue, and it needs to be shit that everybody talks about.
Yep.
Especially if there is this position that has like executive power that people don't even really know about.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about a position like this, and there aren't a ton, you know, like there aren't a ton in every state, but it's not that this position has the ability to make something law or not law immediately, right? This position has the ability to either foster or, like, ruin proposed legislation. So, you know, you would write a bill and then you would get someone to sponsor it. And that's the way that it works. But as a Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry, like, your final, like, if you're amenable to something in an administration, that basically sinks it or floats it. And what we see right now is the current commissioner who, like, you know, medical got through and he doesn't want it.
Right.
And so do we have medical? No. It hasn't happened. Like, LSU got a license and Southern got a license, and we were supposed to have a product out like 90 days ago. And it's not happening because it's not a friendly administration.
How has he inhibited the process?
Yeah, so the way that the current, like, system goes is that under medical, we have 2 licenses that are given to facilities in Louisiana, one's Southern, one's LSU, and they both didn't have the infrastructure to do this. So first of all, it was like a lot of false starts with them figuring that out. Then when they finally were like, yeah, we got to do it, which is just THC. Like, they're just doing, like, consumable THC. Yeah, so it's not...
You can't do anything smokable.
No flower, yeah. And so they subcontracted out organizations or companies from other places that already had this infrastructure somewhere else to come in and set up their grow labs. Well, right when that product was getting ready to go to market, Mike Strain essentially said that's the weed whacker.
Yeah.
It's
insane.
It's also funny that his last name is Strain.
Yeah, I know. And my last name is Green.
Oh,
and like
Margee Green.
Yeah, like, it's too much. The guys at the bank, when I was like I was like at the bank yesterday, and I gave someone my card, and they were like, "This is not happening." Like, they were like calling everybody, all the other tellers over.
You were literally, fuck Beto, you were born to do this. It's your God-given name.
I made that joke for the first time yesterday, where I was like, I really think I was called to do this, and it felt gross because, like, politicians definitely think that about themselves. But
yeah, but you've spent your life, like, actually being, your whole adult life, you're actually you've been a farmer,
right? I mean, the reason that I'm doing this is because it's impossible to farm in this state, and we have to change.
I asked you to be on this podcast before I knew you were running for this office, because I was just like, we should have someone talk about, like, the agricultural state of Louisiana.
That's great.
And I was like, I know one person who knows anything about that. And then, like, 2 days later, I forget who told me, but someone was like, you know, Margee's, like, running. And I was like, what? Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. Yeah. I'm really amped about it.
How'd you like start thinking about all of this?
Where did this come from? Yeah. So I guess, like, so I went to a Women in Agriculture conference. Michael's just smiling at me about this.
I'm smiling about the
like, I know, I knew what you were. Yeah,
I can't keep a straight face.
What do we do?
Yeah, Women in Agriculture.
So I went to a Women in Agriculture conference, and you know, not to throw any shade, but all the speakers were men. And my feathers were pretty ruffled or whatever. I think that was the first time that I was just like, someday I am going to run that department. And, like, I'm going to make it a better place for women to farm. I'm going to make it a better place for, like, people who grow food to farm. I'm going to make it a better place for, like, farmers of color to farm. And I was just, like, fired up. And that was probably 2 years ago. And then, you know, the thought developed to the point of just, like, yeah, I'm going to, like, run for that office someday. And I think...
Well, what led you to even being at that conference in the first place?
Oh, like, what led me to be a farmer?
Yeah.
Oh, great question.
Go way back with
Oh,
this.
God, it's so cheesy. It's real, but it's very cheesy. It's food insecurity after the storm. So like after Hurricane Katrina, this is so like I know it's the cheesiest like Genesis story, but it's real. So
you're running for office.
I know
You have to have
it makes
a
me
cheesy.
feel uncomfortable because it doesn't like anything this like tightly packaged. It doesn't sound genuine,
Right.
and that's why I don't refer to it that often.
Yeah.
But it's also like like if I'm gonna give the real answer to the question, it's that. We didn't have any
Sorry,
food.
I'm inspiring.
Yeah, I apologize for being like too much of a superhero Genesis story. But after the storm, we didn't have food. We were like waiting in line for MREs. You remember that? Were you here, Mary Devin?
I was in Scott, Louisiana.
Scott, Louisiana. Like, I mean, a lot of people experience this. I don't know, Michael. If you,
I mean, I was here when it happened.
right.
I
yeah,
lived here.
Totally.
But we evacuated.
You evacuated, yeah. And we evacuated too. Definitely, like I'm not like I wasn't like riding a roof
Riding the
or
Cajun
something.
Navy
Like,
or
yeah,
whatever, yeah.
yeah, exactly. But like when we were back, there was still not like a food system, no
Yeah.
grocery stores. Like everything was closed. There's no fresh food. So
We had
you're-
MREs, but we came back in November. So we came back a few months after.
Right.
And there were a few grocery stores. They just weren't close.
Well, but that's like exemplary of it, right? You came back in November, and you're still like there are a few grocery stores.
Right.
Our entire food system relies on us being able to just like walk out the door and get something from a grocery store,
Right.
and we have no concept of what happens when or if that collapses. And when I
Right.
started growing food, it was a if this collapses, and now I think what we've seen with the way the world progressed is when this collapses, because we know that our industrial food system is not fit for like 10 more years. What people are afraid of is that there is infrastructure that's like infallible, and it's concentrated like in DC, right? But like here on a day-to-day basis, like our roads work because we can see them, like what happens
Right.
when they're covered in water. Our grocery stores function because they get electricity from a grid.
Right.
And I'm always so fascinated by the sort of like Venn diagram middle of like people who care about like food policy and ag and like sort of like food justice and sovereignty,
Yeah.
and like people who are like doomsday preppers. Because and I think that's with every like all the leftists that I know are like just a step away from being like people who are afraid of the pulse and like hiding, you know, food
Right.
and seeds.
Right.
It's like a weird community mixture.
I think like a overarching theme with leftists is like they don't want to be doomsday preppers.
Right.
Right,
Like
right.
they're
I
driven
know
to.
that I might have to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
I would really rather, we just got along.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think, Michael, you were like, oh, this is fragile and it could outright collapse. Like what we
It did.
know, it did.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like, it actually took me a while to figure out that was where my next step came from, which was like, so we went through the food insecurity, and a lot of people go through that exact same food insecurity every single day, not related to a storm. Like it's not difficult for people to imagine not having food.
Right.
It was difficult for me to imagine not having food. And what we got is like no fresh food, right? There's gum in MREs to like keep you regular.
Right.
Because you're not getting any fiber.
Yeah.
And so then in my freshman year of college at LSU, I started growing food as a hobby because I was like, oh, I don't want that to ever happen to me again.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I'm a normal person when I'm growing food. Like I'm not like it's like meditation for me. I know that also sounds super woo woo, but like I am the most at peace when I am in a
Right.
field without anyone else.
Yeah.
And so that's how it developed. And then it got to a point of organizing when I was like, oh, we're trying to grow food because there is an imperative for us to be able to domestically produce food. We will die without it. And right now, wanting to start a farm and grow food is more of an investment than like starting like a Greek yogurt business. Like it will be harder for you to like sweat all day, every day and grow food and like start up a business that way than it is for you to start like a froyo chain. You know, like it should be easy for people to be like, I want to work my ass off and feed my community and make just a living. Like farmers want to make like a literal living and they can't.
Yeah.
I'm on a pulpit. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's the whole point.
That's the
We're
whole-
just
yeah.
too dumb to respond. We're just letting you carry this episode.
No,
because
I mean, I was gonna like it's fun to start with like the weed policy, which is actually
Right.
like important, but like what are some of the other ways that you can make it easier for people to start farms, to like sustain themselves financially with farms, to have more like women farmers, to have more farmers of color.
And when we say farmers of color, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying of color, but we're probably talking specifically about black people in Louisiana. And
We are.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the people who we
I mean, in
sort of
Louisiana
stole.
specifically.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So there's also the one thing I will kind of pop out from that is there's like what's called like a new American farmer movement, which is that there are a lot of like larger immigrant communities that have agricultural backbones in their
Right.
country, and then they come here. So my neighbors at my farm are it's a cooperative of Vietnamese farmers. You know, most of whom had settled here like a long time ago. A lot of the Vietnamese communities around New Orleans settled here because of mission work after or during the Vietnam War. But a lot of those people who are still coming over to like settle here in America don't necessarily acclimate immediately to like what's going on in the middle of this city and stay in like immigrant communities on sort of the margins and stay pretty culturally like separate. And so being able to support immigrant communities in farming is like there is definitely by and large what we should be talking about in a big way is black land loss. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like black land loss is it's like it's breathtakingly bad. We see that like farmland loss is huge. All of like 95% of the farmland in America is going to transition hands in the next 65 years because of age. But we don't have young farmers to take that land over. And when we do look at the young farmers that we have, when we have people who are viable young farmers, they're mostly white. And that's because farming is so financially risky and you have to have a social safety net to do it. And that's why like people joke that the whole time they've known me, I've always had like multiple hustles, and it's because you can't just go farm
Right.
unless somebody gives you land or somebody gives you a tractor,
Right.
or you have no debt to service. Like you can't just go farm. And so that like Benjamin, the question of like how do you make this more like how do you make it a better environment for people to grow in is like a robust system of programs. In Colorado, they have a tax incentive for people to sell their, like when they're transitioning out of their land, they get like a huge tax break to sell their land to what's called a socially disadvantaged farmer by the USDA. So then people are like trying to sell 500-acre timber farms, and like it makes sense for them to parcel that out into 10-acre parcels that they sell to young farmers. And then that land is reasonably priced for a young person to try to like take a risk on it. It's very... I feel weird about land ownership in general, which I know is like a bizarre thing to say to some people. People
Not
are like,
us.
what do you mean you feel weird about land ownership?
Yeah.
But the only realm in which I feel like very definite about land ownership is like farmers and farm cooperatives.
Yeah.
Because of the equity, it's not like building a house. Like building soil is like, you're like servicing the earth when you build soil. And if you are removed from property, you can't ever take that with you. And it happens to farmers all the time.
What percentage of farmland in Louisiana is like family farms versus giant corporately owned spaces?
That is a question that's unanswerable because of statistical obfuscation.
Got it.
Basically, like families can create conglomerates.
Right.
Right. So like it was, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they're family farms.
Exactly.
And they get subsidies as family farms. You tweeted about that recently.
Yeah. There was like a Forbes, and I didn't explicitly post the list of names because it felt a little too call outy, but there's like, you can access the list of people who are like the subsidy billionaires club, and so many of them are in Louisiana. And like, I was kind of, I was like I kind of stay up late and do research on all like my policy. And so I was on this subsidy kick, and I was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, like investigative journalism. I'm going to see all these corporation names, and then I'm going to be like, I'm coming after you. And a lot
Margee
of it
just
is
lifted up her middle fingers.
I did. I lifted up my middle fingers, and I like started clicking through, and it's like it's names I know. Like it's like people whose like kids I know who are like trying to make a living farming too, but like, what does it mean to be part of that family? Wow. You know, like there's a difference between like, let's use my name, right? Because I don't want to call out friends, but like to say like Margee Green is trying to be a farmer, right? But if you found out that like my family owns like a portion of the Mississippi River, we do not. Like a portion of Mississippi River land that's been like a cane plantation since, you know, the early 1800s. Like what
What was going on in the early 1800s that's relevant here?
Wait. No. Yeah, like say we own part of like the German coast, right? You know? No, and actually, I mean, I should be I'm like joking about it. I'm like, I should be explicit about that. Like my family owned like part of, you know, like like your family. Like I was looking at a map the other day, there are a bunch of Dupuis on it. Like there are a bunch of Charbonnets on it. Like if you're from here and you're white, you come from a planter, probably. Yeah. Like if you're like from here. I don't mean like you're from here since the 80s from here. Right. You know, so like what do you get from being someone whose family owns like massive pieces of property in Louisiana? It's impossible to tell. Right. Because like my family doesn't own that land anymore. But there are probably people with the same last name who do own that land, and they probably very technically are my family. Right. And it's
pretty hard to quantify like access and like these social dynamics that are, like run deeper than the amount of acres owned. Like it's just whole networks that some people can get into, some people can't get into.
Yeah, exactly. Also, it came out of my mouth, and I know that we call plantation owners planters. Like that's what we call them. But as a farmer, I want to be like, that's not fair. They didn't plant shit. Yeah. Like they didn't plant a single thing. And I'm very clear on that. But that's like what we colloquially call them.
Yeah. Also, calling people who have only been here since the 80s, like not from here, that's more New Orleans gatekeeping. You're like, your family didn't own slaves. Get out of my face.
Yeah, like you're not a New Orleanian if you weren't part of this in one way or the other. Yeah, no, but I guess what I'm saying is like there is a difference between people. Like my dad was from Ohio. Yeah. But my mom is like from Haiti. You know, so it's weird. Like, what is identity? Like, now we're getting into like the biggest thing of like, what is Creole identity?
What is identity? Who am I?
But going back to agriculture, what am I doing here? Yeah. No, going back to agriculture, it's like impossible to suss out like the history of land ownership and agriculture, especially in southern states.
But when you say that like you have friends who are trying to be farmers, are you just going by last names? Or
exactly. Just like someone could say like Margee, like that I am like my name is Marguerite Charbonnet Green, right? And I have a hard time farming, and I will never probably be able to own land. Or actually, I shouldn't say that. Pause viz. I will own land someday to farm, but right now I cannot afford land, and I rent. And so, like, someone could be like, interesting, she says it's so hard for her, but, like, on this map, there's this name that owns this acreage. So it's hard for me to look at a list of people who are, like, being paid by the government not to farm. Right. And say, oh, interesting, my friend Mary over there who has that same, not you. Right. This isn't me throwing shade at you, Mary Devon. No, like, my friend Mary over there who says she has such a hard time farming. Like, when I look at this, her family's getting $1.2 billion over the past 10 years to not farm. Yeah. Right. So it's,
when you say to not farm, can you talk more explicitly about what that means?
So the way that subsidies work is they're essentially like market regulation for commodity crops, right? So either
what are the commodity crops here?
Commodity crops that we grow here are corn, we grow cane, we grow soy, we grow cotton, we grow sorghum, and rice. I mean, rice is, a couple of them are weird because it's a commodity depending on what your market is, right? And if you're growing like Louisiana rice and you're selling it like retail, or I mean, obviously you're selling it wholesale, but then someone's selling it retail with your farm name on it, that's a different market than you taking your soybeans and trying to sell them for getting a government subsidy to sell them to China. So you can grow a commodity crop and you cannot be treating it as a commodity. Like soybeans that are making tofu, that's not a commodity. But soybeans that are going to feed for pigs, that's a commodity.
Right.
What's that sound? Sorry. I hate the noises.
That's the subsidy sound?
That is trickle down economics. So we can hear it.
But
There's
when
some really creative, weird, shitty drive time DJ.
it's like got
Behind all
fired
of
from
this.
He was so tired of air horns.
Marijuana. Okay, I was seeing if the weed whacker came back.
You didn't say, you got to say cannabis.
Cannabis.
That was a good weed whacker.
That was not a good weed whacker.
So,
I thought it was good.
people getting paid not to farm.
Yeah, so what I mean when I say not to farm is like part of that subsidy is that the government pays you a certain amount of money for how much you're pushing out to like raise the price of that crop to make it like quote like a livable wage for you to farm it, even though we don't need it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So this is like the bizarre broken part of this where it's like, or we
the
could just
free market.
not. Yeah, I mean, there's been I think that we're in a moment where people are realizing it sounds like it's attacking farmers, so it's a really tricky thing, and I like want to think about the language of it a lot, but essentially it's a government handout to farm, but only for the biggest farmers. And so the part where people are not, there are people who are paid to not farm their land, their acreage at all, so that the market isn't flooded with a crop. And so that means like specifically like the Rockefellers, that's what I was referring to the other night, Mary Devon, is like they receive farm subsidies, classified income as farmers for not growing food on like 100 acres in upstate New York. That's a private ranch.
Still being motherfuckers. It's like,
well, you know,
such a long history of them being motherfuckers.
I feel like you double down. Like I feel like it like you inbreed being a rich jerk.
Yeah, I think the longer, if your family keeps making more people, then yeah, you're just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah.
But also, so I mean, they're being paid not to farm, which is already bad. That they're not producing anything, but like,
oh, there's a kid singing Old Town Road.
He's really cute.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
He was like dancing.
That's the Rockefeller sound.
why is everything happening so on cue right now? This is crazy. We're like talking about like country shit, and then he's out there.
But also like change in like system. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm
and
trying too
genre
hard.
bending. No, I'm seeing it. But I mean, is there anyone in Louisiana that's like growing diverse crops?
Yeah.
Like, couldn't that be happening?
Absolutely. So that's what I'm advocating for, that you like nail on the head right there. So the idea is if we're subsidizing something, why are we subsidizing something that we don't even keep in our country for the most part? Like and like subsidies it's a weak system, right? Because we subsidize all these crops for farmers, but it's contingent on them selling things. And right now we're in a trade war with China, which is where most of our soybeans go. So those farmers are hurting. Like those people who usually receive government subsidy are hurting right now because they can't even sell their crop. It's just sitting in a silo. And that land could be transitioned to diverse agriculture.
And what's happening is so not attached to like their land or anyone they're talking to, or something they even have fucking control over.
Exactly.
It's foreign.
They're
trade
at the whims
markets
of the government
rather than like feeding the guy down the fucking road.
Right. That is exactly right. And like, you know, if anyone wants to talk about like how do we write the language to like explain this very complicated process, like I'm here for that. Because it's so difficult to get through the conversation to the point where you're like, look, we have land and we have people who are like growing something we don't need, and they're great and I'm not mad at them, but we need to show that like this is not a good system and it's going to collapse, and it's currently collapsing because of our trade war. And it's going to collapse after that, even if we fix that, because of global climate change, because we're losing land and our temperatures are rising, which means our bug and disease pressure is rising and our crop yields are going down. And so we can either be reactive to that and build power and diversify agriculture so that we can feed ourselves, because the global south is collapsing and we won't be able to get our food from South America anymore. It's just not going to happen, whether we like it or not. So we can do this kicking and screaming, or we can come in on the front end and like be the agricultural state that we once were. Look at California's model. Like, I'm not trying to be like California's so cool because they think they're so cool, but like really at the end of the day, like they run their state's economies run on food production.
Yeah.
And it's a good state.
Yeah.
They're fine.
Yeah.
They tried to secede recently. Like they're doing okay.
They're all right.
Yeah. Like we could do that again instead of being like, oh, well, our agricultural...
You're saying Louisiana should secede again from the Union.
We should secede from the Union. Back to the original complicated No.
Go on.
Margee's pro-planter.
No.
Pro-global wildlife, pro...
I feel like I've done a lot of groundwork that's an okay joke to make because I feel like I've done the work to show I'm not.
Yeah, people often come on this show and they're like talking about their work that they're passionate about, and we're like, what if we said that you thought the opposite of what you thought?
And people are like seeing their whole life of like community work flash before their eyes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we can also cut whatever you want.
But we could sustain our own residents.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the thing is, it's like people think it's a cute idea, right? They think like they're like, oh, there's a modern farmer magazine at the checkout at Whole Foods. This girl wants to do that. And it's like, no, actually, like our state used to produce food. And there are a lot of states that do produce food. And we have an imperative right now to produce food because we're not going to be able to get it from somewhere else.
Right.
And I feel like it's crazy how backwards people think about this when they're like, because it's all to a certain extent centrally planned. And it's like, you can either plan to have it benefit nobody around, or you can plan to like make sure that your fucking vegetables are going to be cheaper and like meat is going to be cheaper. Like if you just...
And we'll have it at all.
But somebody... Like the government is involved. They're like, you can't pretend that like this is how fucking free markets work, is that people independently decided to not grow shit on a bunch of land. That's insane.
Can I ask a very dumb question? Yeah. How do people justify subsidizing not farming when there is so much food insecurity?
So it's not a dumb question. It's a question that the answer is really upsetting, which is that people are incredibly on the brightest side of it. People are very checked out of the food system, and it's like considered kind of a boring topic to like the uninitiated.
Right.
And then on the darkest side of it, like they don't care, because the wealthiest people in America, and I think we talk about this a lot, like, or at least I talk about it a lot with my peers, and I know I've talked about it with some of you guys, is like when we talk about the wealthiest people and when we talk about people who are making these sort of like concentrated subsidies for owning lots of land, we're not talking about like the richest person at your school's in high school's dad. Like we're talking about like someone you've never met, you'll never meet, and like they continue to consolidate wealth, and any financial decision that they make could never ruin them. Like we're talking about a type of astronomical wealth that you will never
lizard people
understand.
We're talking about Illuminati as crazy.
I just think like everyone, I talk to kids a lot, right? And like a lot of the time what I see is that young people, when they hear talking about something like taking away subsidies or taking away like billions of unearned dollars from the wealthiest people in America. And I want to reiterate, unearned dollars. There's nothing that you can do that makes your time worth that much money when everyone else's time is not worth that much money. You can't, there's no personal merit that can validate that.
And a bunch of it goes back to fucking slave money anyway.
Exactly. Like there's nothing I could ever do to mean that I should make like 400,000 times more an hour than you. Like I could be magic and I still wouldn't deserve it. And like,
you are magic.
Thank you. See, I'm on all the time. But like, I'll talk to kids and I can see in their eyes that they're like secretly like, oh, I think my dad's rich. You're like, no, honey. Like, I'm not talking about your dad. Like, your dad is going to be fine. Like, oh, your dad's a pilot? Cool. Like, he's technically poor. Like, you're like, you might be the richest kid in your class. You're poor, technically. And so, like, the answer to that is that people that far up, like, don't have any analysis of food insecurity in America. They just, like, it doesn't exist to them.
So there's no, like, ready-to-hand argument that it's like, oh, like, even if you try and give it to the impoverished, then it'll still hit the market and that'll still flood them. Like, it's not.
No, we can't flood the market with food. Like, we couldn't.
What does that even mean? I'm so stupid. Explain what flood the market with food.
I was almost going to talk like an idiot.
Yeah.
You should talk.
No, I mean, like, I think you understand what this is. Like, flood the market with food would be like, what if we all started growing food immediately on all of this land that we're talking about right now?
And you're saying we all could still be okay.
We would still never have enough food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like we could never create a situation where we would have to subsidize food out of like need to price set.
Right.
Like we should subsidize food because it's very difficult to grow. And because risky and like with intensifying weather, it's really hard to like, with flooding, like if we're going to subsidize something, and I don't actually necessarily think that we should subsidize anything, but if we're going to subsidize something, we should be subsidizing food. We will never be in a position where too many people are growing food because, like right now we're getting food from other places. That food could stay in their country. It could get exported to another country that's more in need and less suitable to grow.
So your articulation of like we can't flood the market is based on the idea that food is like a human right and not something that we need to really fuss about the price of. Because the like flooding the market, like from like a my understanding is that like it's the concern is too much food will drive the prices down too much. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, and what you're asking is actually like an incredibly complex question. So it goes back to the fact when I say that the food system is broken, I mean that it is like inherently broken in a way that is unfixable. The cost of food as we experience it is far too low, and it's hard to talk about that because there are people who can't afford food. Right. So like we don't have an answer to your question, and it is like and I'm not saying this to be like, so come on, I'm like people sit in rooms and like
give themselves headaches.
This. Like I would say like 50% of my meetings a week are like us just being like, how do we increase food production and also make sure the people who are producing food are making a living wage?
And then not shame people for not buying locally when they can't afford to.
Yeah, it's a gargantuan problem that I think if we're being real, there isn't actually a fix to it within our current system. But we just like what we know that we have to do is we have to start working on it on the highest level. So we have to like stop making tiny food access and food production nonprofits sit in like community center rooms and like yell and cry and like whiteboard stuff out. We need to have like the government figuring it out,
And maybe the answer to that is that we provide people with enough. I mean, this is like large scale, national, probably never going to happen in my lifetime because the world is on fire, or underwater. Or
both.
Yeah, true. You can have
in the Gulf of Mexico.
Or like in the 80s when all those rivers were catching on fire.
Or like, have you ever seen Free Willy where the whale jumps over the
Maybe people just shouldn't be paying for their food. Like maybe people should be paid for maybe some people should and some people shouldn't. But like, or maybe like food stamps would be going to this great food and it would cover that and it would, you know what I'm saying? Like something
I'm
like
just picturing Allen Ginsberg going like, when can I go to the supermarket and buy what I want with my good looks?
like workers should be paid for like a living wage to be producing this food, and also people who can't afford it should still be able to access it.
Absolutely.
But that's so fucking...
I mean, that's like the way that you presented it is like the end goal, and the whole problem is like, okay, yes, you're completely correct.
How do we do it now?
How do we get there? And that is
without just helping a bunch of girls with chair tattoos who can afford, an $8 avocado.
Right, exactly. Like how do we sort of like realign the entire food system of our country?
Right.
It's not an impossible question, because I would just like go back to bed if I thought there wasn't an answer.
Right.
And certainly there have been days where I felt like that, but we have to like keep working.
I mean, as complicated as it actually is, because there are so many like systemic obstacles towards the final goal, like it does seem like the actual answers are fairly simple, where it's like, instead of growing a bunch of bullshit that doesn't help anybody, why don't we grow diverse crops that will feed people like near where they live? I mean, that's simple.
Yep.
Getting there, I'm sure, is stuff you understand, and like understand like the obstacles and like the ways to get through them. But I think articulating that like there is a way to do this that's not insane,
exactly,
like is important.
I have a slogan idea for you.
Go for it.
From each according to his ability, to each according to his need.
I mean, obviously you're kidding, and that would be career suicide. But I think there's like something really beautiful about the fact that you can, in most scenarios, get people to admit that they believe that food should be a human right.
For sure.
Like most people, like when you do the sort of like walkthrough of it, right? If you were to walk into a room and be like, hey, who thinks food is a human right? Everyone would be like, I'm so tired of young people, get out of here.
Yeah.
But if you like sat down and you were like, look, this is what the food system looks like. This is how it's tiered out. This is where we can prove that access to fresh, healthy, affordable food is actually being like, you know, is like being stuck or gummed up in certain places for certain reasons, then people are like, oh yeah, that is unfair. Like everyone deserves to eat.
That's where every Republican woman in a Mercedes who would never give a homeless man $1 gives him like a Nutri-Grain bar or something.
Yes,
because
there it
they're
is.
like, oh yeah, because you
can't use
food.
this to buy drugs.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But like I think everyone inherently believes everyone should be able to eat, and the idea of someone going hungry or thirsty is disgusting to even the worst people.
Yeah, like food access. Like, there's so many jargony terms in the work.
Food access is not jargon.
Okay, good.
I'm someone who at youth stuff is like community planning. Like I'm the person that's like, this is all stupid. Let's just say what we mean. And like food access is not like that.
Yeah.
Like I think that like food justice, right? As we experience it, which food justice, like I guess the point of what I'm about to say is that it's broadly palatable. And my biggest complaint is that what we end up having is a lot of people who are like, y'all, like, if you give a kid a carrot, they'll eat it. Isn't that cool? Wish their parents would just feed them good food instead of taking them to McDonald's, which is just like such a broken analysis of what's going on.
Well, it's also easy because it's also just like, it's these people's fault.
Yeah, it's other people's fault.
Right.
And it's because they just like aren't making the right choice. And it's because they're like choosing to like, you know, eat like inconvenient junk food, and like that is actually a predetermined, like destined, that is like built into the cards, baked into the cake, so to speak. And so getting people past that first part of food access is, you know, a leap.
Does anyone need any water?
I would take a water.
Bring you.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Do you have a slogan?
So I'm running on, like, I have a catchphrase kind of. It's not really a slogan. It's food, farms, climate cannabis.
Food, farms, climate, cannabis.
Yeah.
Got it. That's catchy.
My mom's really upset that I have cannabis in it.
Wow.
She wants me to take cannabis out.
My mom is absolutely happy that you have cannabis.
Cool.
In it, so,
Your mom's vote will cancel out my mom's vote. No, I'm kidding. My mom is going to vote for me.
Food, farms. Food, farms, climate, sensimia.
Food, farms, climate, adult access to cannabis.
Yeah.
It was like that was basically my argument. I was like,
Food,
Mom,
farms,
it's not catchy.
Climate, sublime tattoos.
Food, farms, climate, chill times.
Yeah. The chill vibe candidate.
Yeah. I would say I am objectively the chill vibe candidate.
What about as a slogan, good times, fun oldies?
Oh, yeah. That was actually the first working slogan.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a local radio station slogan. It's an oldies
It was
station.
Actually, Every Kiss Begins with K was my first slogan. No, I'm kidding.
Okay,
no, that wouldn't even make sense.
Yeah.
You were the gullible one.
Yeah. I was like trying to remember your name. It was like,
is her name Katie?
Yeah.
When is the election?
Thank you for asking that. I should have led with that. It is October 12th. So the primary is October 12th. The general is November 16th. So it's the same time that you would be voting for your governor. Oh, gotta stop that one. I like trying things out, and I'm like, yeah, I have to stop saying governor with a British accent. That's over. The last time I'll do that today.
No, I think like being endearing and a human being helps politicians a lot of the time. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably the last person anyone should ask about, that kind of shit.
I think like Cockney accents are inherently anarchist because they call everyone governor. You know what I mean? Like, you're your own governor, man.
It's like libertarian socialism, I guess.
Yeah.
Ew, gross.
Chomsky.
What? Oh, I never read a book. I don't know.
I've never read a book.
Yeah.
I will say, like, political strategy, Benjamin, turns out not something we can just intuit.
Yeah.
I know. At the beginning of this, I was like, I just like kind of feel out what people think about like what I think, and then I'll like put that out into the world, and then you end up getting feedback of like, you need to say adult access to cannabis, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Where
I
do
don't
you get
know
that
what
feedback?
I'm doing. You get it from consultants and managers. Yeah.
So you're trying to win.
Oh yeah, I'm running to win.
Yeah,
this is
awesome.
This is a very, very, very legit campaign. We're doing a statewide.
So is the fact that it's on the governor ballot, does that mean that does that like mitigate the amount of progress you can make through canvassing, because it's not like a turnouty type thing?
Well, it's turnout for primaries, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what you would, I guess what a lot of people are, when you run 2 Democrats,
right?
You can force a runoff, and people have all sorts of ranging theories about that, and I tend on the side of like, look, our platforms are different. I have to run. I just have to run. Our platforms are different. If they weren't, I would take a backseat for 4 more years.
Right.
But the issue would be that since we have a strong contender for a Democratic governor, that if there were a runoff, there would not be much to motivate people to go vote in the runoff. And I think that that's the strategy portion that's like unnerving people who want a Democratic Commissioner of Agriculture, maybe sort of even more than they want the policy that I'm running as a Democrat on my policy.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not running for the ultimate goal. And of course I want the ultimate goal of having a Democrat in this seat, but I am running for my policy.
And it's urgent. Like, this is extremely urgent. I mean,
we have 8 to 12 years.
Yeah, now every social issue is urgent, just with the state of our society, but specifically anything to do with agriculture or the environment, food justice, especially like on the front lines of climate disaster. Like, you don't have 4 more years.
Right. And
8 to 12 years till what?
8 to 12 years until like collapse if we don't have decarbonization. Like until we have created a situation that is... Right now, we've created a situation that's unfixable, right? But we've created a situation that we could mitigate.
Right.
And we have 8 to 12 years to work towards a goal of, like, turning the ship around.
Right.
If we don't and we move forward, then we will end up in a situation where we are just in a downhill spiral.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the worst parts about talking about this to people who are not there yet with you politically, and I say there yet... Like, I respect everybody's points of view, but I do think that ultimately, I think that there is an ultimate truth that we have, like, damaged the earth to a degree that if we don't change a lot of stuff right now, it will be our demise, right? And so I want to be respectful of other people's broad and sweeping views, but that is one thing that's a non-negotiable for me, is, like, we've done that.
It's not negotiable for reality.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just happening.
Yeah, and I want to be respectful, but it's like we have to get there. We have to get the conversation there, right? So I cannot not run on that. Like when I get the feedback of like, you can't say climate change. It's like, no, I like have to say climate change because we all have to say climate change.
Right.
We cannot continue to exist in a situation where only like, funny that in Louisiana, like the coastal elites are New Orleanians, right? Like we're in a position where like we're the New York, LA to the rest of our state.
Yeah.
And we're talking about climate change here. And it's really easy to sit in this room and for me to be like, I'm running on climate change. But the fact of the matter is, like, I'm running to be a state, like, represent our state. And there are a lot of people in our state who aren't ready to say that word. And it's not their fault because climate change was politicized.
Right.
It was politicized on purpose by oil industry.
Not just politicized, but, like, massive disinformation.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they were lied to.
Yeah, they were lied to. And they're not dumb. Like, this is what we do to rural communities.
Right.
Like, and then we villainize them.
Right.
And so, so I guess where I was going with that is like, when you look at someone who's running as a Democrat on I'm also avoiding the word progressive, but I'll say it right now. Like, you're running as a Democrat on a progressive ticket. And like, I'm having issues getting the message of climate change across. Like, when you look to the other side, to the far, far right, you have Gary Landrieu, who's running on what is inarguably an eco-fascist ticket. It is to protect our coast and to close our borders.
Right.
Why do we need to do those things in tandem?
Yeah.
Right? It's because you're trying to protect land and keep a stronghold for when climate change happens. That is not a platform that is not aware of climate change.
Yeah, exactly. These people know.
Yeah.
And
That's why
they're gearing up to have a fascist ethno-state where like only a handful of people have any control over the, means of production. Sorry.
No,
like I don't know how else to fucking say it.
It's okay.
The economy.
Margee's on a podcast called No Pods, No Casters. I think she knows what she was in for.
But I mean, one of the things that's really exciting to me is like how broadly palatable this is, right? So I'm on a podcast called No Pods, No Casters because I feel like this platform, it appeals to people who are all the way to the left.
Yeah.
And the only challenge of making sure that we get everybody who's all the way to the right too is FaceTime. Because really, like, everybody who is a working class person, this serves you.
Yeah.
Like, what I am talking about is better for all of us. And the issue is, like, how do we make sure that all of us come to a room? And that is, like, the same level of question as, like, how do we fix the food system, right? Like, I realize I'm going up against, like, an unimaginably hard thing of, like, how do you get FaceTime with someone who is politically diametrically opposed to you and say, hey, wait, no, I swear, if you just give me 5 minutes, I'll tell you, like, I'm running something that is not averse to your way of
Your
life.
platform is so good for people. It's so good.
Also, I really believe in you. If you actually like were able to somehow meet every single person in Louisiana, which is impossible,
Right.
they would like you. Like they really would like you.
I usually before this happened, and like I will tell you, it has been bizarre to run a statewide campaign. Like, and I'm in the nascent stages of it, like very beginning of it. But what I've learned about myself and about this system already is huge. And one of the things I'm most excited about is being able to walk out of this and know what running a campaign looks like, regardless of what happens. It builds power in our community.
Yeah.
But like, I get on the phone with people who I know are ready to hate me because that's been the preface of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I have to call them anyway. And so I do like deep breaths and we start talking, and I'm worried that I don't know the answers to like the questions they're going to ask. And then I do. And then by the end of the conversation, you can hear that they're kind of like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, she's okay.
Yeah.
The kid's
Like,
good.
yeah. Like, I have had, yesterday alone, I had 3 people be like, man, you're viable. And like, it's a weird compliment, right? Because I'm like, yeah, I'm viable. Like, of course I'm viable. I'm a working farmer. Like, I'm a working farmer who's been like organizing and struggling for 10 years to try to like make this state better with no financial gain. Like, I'm clearly in this for the right reasons.
Right.
But we're also polarized. And like, I don't want to boil it down to an argument of like, we just need to get in the same room. But at the end of the day, like, there are things that still unite us. Like, there are. Just
Especially eating food and breathing air and having water. Like, it's the most basic stuff. And like not being underwater too.
Right.
There's so much to this that's like, I know people are coming at things from like way, way different sides, but like the basics of like being a physical being on Earth, like you have to at a certain point, like, it's in your own self-interest to like want food.
Right. I mean, you were talking about if you're a working class person. I think even if you're not a working class person, if you're in Louisiana, it's still like, if you want to live here.
I feel like living in Louisiana and working any job makes you a working class person because of how much you sweat anyway. Right? Like, all people in Louisiana in the summer are working class people because we're all
There's
like,
no such thing as a
funky ass rich people. In this
There's like no such thing as a white collar job because it's all at least gray.
That's true.
Brown
Sweat.
collar.
Like beige seersucker that was once white.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I don't know if you guys saw this, that the state, so like one of the things when we're talking about like what unifies us, right, is that a contact I called early on who does farmer organizing in central Louisiana, like her first thing that she said was like, sorry, but climate change isn't going to play north of I-10. And I hear that and like accept that criticism because people know their own communities best. But the state just released the like coastal readiness plan. Did y'all see this?
No.
So like HUD essentially and the state of Louisiana and like the couple other organizations like put together this like 150-page document that explicitly outlines what happens to our state like as we lose our coast. It's really compelling because it says a bunch of stuff about like I think it calls out like 50 years for how long New Orleans or like outlying communities exist. And I know we've been bouncing all around. Something I was going to say earlier is like the hardest thing in talking about this is we don't have solid numbers.
Right.
So everybody's coming in cold. Like some people are like, New Orleans exists for like 20 more years. And some people are like, we probably got 150. Like, and what is the middle and like what's reasonable? So anyway, this plan says 50, which if a public plan says 50, I'm inclined to think it means 40. Right.
At
like,
best.
yeah, at best. That's like my reasonable assumption. But, you know, one of the big things it lays out is like, how do we move people? Like literally what happens when we start moving coastal communities north? And that is how it affects. Like that is how it affects our communities above I-10. Like, yeah, sure, you can be like, no, I'm getting emotional. I'm sorry. It's really sad.
I know, it's really scary. And I'm so hungover.
I'm laughing. I just like literally I like think about this and like get upset all the time. So I'm only laughing because I'm like, I know, right?
I never think about it.
Yeah.
I need to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it's really scary, yeah.
I mean, it feels crazy, but like we bought a canoe recently, like to be like literally, because it's we got like, and that's a crazy thing too, is there are people who like being a New Orleanian is part of their identity, and they're like they're like don't care about fighting this.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's a really hard thing to look in the face.
Yeah.
For sure.
Also, before, like, everyone's been saying we lose a football field a day or a million football fields a day, an hour. Like, everyone.
An hour.
Well, it's 1 hour, right?
You've been hearing it your whole
like
life.
Yeah.
And when you hear something when you're 6 and then continue to hear it and it just gets worse, it just sort of feels like, yeah, we hear it, but we're still here. And that's how, like, my parents are. And they're like, they've been saying this forever. And I'm like, and it's been continuing to get worse.
Right.
And so many people think that means that it's not real because we're far enough away that it hasn't impacted us. I mean, it has.
Someone should lobby to get Google Maps to just...
There is actually a movement to get the map to be accurate.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Louisiana looks like a boot, and it's more like an ankle.
Yeah, that's really fucked up.
You guys have all seen that actual map, right?
Yeah,
that
it's
real
horrible.
map. Yeah, I was like, I was in DC doing policy work on the Farm Bill in November, which was actually one of the codifying moments of like, I know I use the word codifying wrong, but I like the way that I use it. So like, I'm almost just like, if I keep doing it, I'll get it entered into the like vernacular as the way I mean, which is like coalescing, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Yeah, you'll codify it up in there.
Yeah, I'll get it all. Yeah, everything will come together and be codified to make codify the word that I want it to be. But so like, yeah, we were doing a lobby day, and it was young farmers from like all around the country. People were like, what are you pissed about? Like, what are you pissed about? Like, what are you going to go talk to your people about? And we were all really like mad at like the people from Vermont because they were like, we're just going to go have a cup of coffee with Bernie Sanders. And we were like, oh, we're going to go like cry in front of Bill Cassidy and hope that he like sees us as humans. And so I just got into a conversation with somebody that was like, oh, I'm worried about coastal land loss and like the fact that our state's disappearing. And she was like, what do you mean? And I explained it to her. And then I actually naively thought that I could pull up Google Maps and show her.
Oh, geez.
And I brought it up and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that actually like looks like Louisiana. This is not what it looks like anymore. And she was just kind of like, okay. I was like, no, I swear the maps are lying. She was like, all right, just backing towards the door because it is an epic, like it is a like crazy proportion that the answer is like, because of climate change that's accelerated by the oil and gas industries that have just ruined our coast for like hundreds of years. And like now our maps lie about how much land there is, and our coastal communities are being erased and pushed north. Yeah. And the news doesn't report on it, and we're not allowed to like go after the companies that caused
also,
it.
I feel like Google Maps takes a different picture of my house every year. Why can't we have a it's always
like
very up to date
in it.
I mean, I think the answer is that it's like a very intentional, massive lie.
Well, okay.
Michael's
Devil's
like, you guys are being mean to oil and gas.
No. What I'm saying is that if it's satellite image, like if you look at a map of sea level, then there. Of the water level, then the coast is like annihilated. Yeah. But if it's an actual satellite image, then you just see through, the 6 inches of water that are covering much of the coast.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
You do if you zoom in.
But I mean, in the story that's being told to everyone,
right?
The reason there isn't an urgent, the reason that people have to fight to change the map is because like this kind of like minutia is like easy to sort of manipulate. But yeah, it's there's intention behind it.
Yeah, it's like painting your dead sibling into a family picture every year because you like don't want to admit that they
died. Should be your campaign.
I was just trying to think of like what is it like, and
you
the idea that we
chill
just
vibes
I know
to the
like
goth ass
the macabre candidate.
That is like the best the best analogy I've ever fucking heard in my entire life. It's so funny.
I was thinking about it, like, as we're talking about it, right? I'm like, well, should we change the map? Because, like, that's what Louisiana's like. Why would you continue to represent it as something it didn't look like just because you missed what it looked like when you were a kid? And the answer is, like, the same reason that people, like, leave children's rooms untouched.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Because they're just like, it'll be fine. Like, you know, we're kind of like Miss Havisham in a room of rotting food with our map of Louisiana, refusing to accept what's going on.
So what?
So fucking Dickensian.
Everything I think about is Dickensian.
Also, galvanize? Would that work?
Galvanize, thank you. I'm going to replace it.
Yeah, or you could just stick to your guns.
People just do this. Like I'll say codify the way I want to, and people go. Like they just like I can just see their eyes be like, I think what? Okay,
I think we're gonna go over.
They're like she seems like well spoken in other ways. So. So maybe I'm wrong, and that's how I'll make the change happen.
Margee, how do we help you codify your campaign?
Thank you for that question. So basically, I guess there's a couple ways. One is that I'm doing a nominating petition, and what that means is that it's kind of the least popular way to get onto a ballot. You can pay to get on a ballot, or you can get 5,000 signatures, a minimum of 500, sorry, I misspoke. A minimum of 500 from each one of our 6 congressional districts. Okay. So, you know, obviously signatures here are really important, but I kind of have those on lock. Right. So anyone who wants to do the work of like going to other districts and getting signatures is huge. Like that's really, really helpful because obviously the amount that you can pay to be on a ballot is a lot. To me, it's $1,000, but to a campaign, it's really not that much. Right. So we're using this as the kind of backbone of our organizing. It's like a way to be forced to actually, and I don't mean be forced like I'm kicking and screaming, but it's like a way to hold myself accountable to making sure that we're like talking to people everywhere.
Yeah.
So either, you know, signing that petition, taking a stack of those petitions and being willing to get signatures from other people for this campaign, just like for the ability for me to be on the ballot, and especially taking those to like other districts is huge. And I'm happy, like, you know, what we're doing is really like facilitating people in doing that. So picking out festivals and, you know, paying for a beer and a hot dog for somebody to go and get like 50 signatures and listen to some music at like the Beauregard Watermelon Festival or whatever.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah, it's really fun. And it's also like, it's like, I'm kind of getting to do like the Louisiana World Tour in my like beat up Subaru. You know, getting to go to all the festivals in the state and see all the parts of the state.
Extremely on brand.
Some America would cum their pants for you if some like artsy like magazine did a profile about you, because they love rural, you know what I mean? Everyone would love. They're just saying they should do that. Like
Garden and Gun could like follow me or something.
No, something like something like
Country
big.
Like
I think something big. I think that like Vice or something. Some dipshit like publication.
Let's
Vice, or if all those huge publications can be like, look at how easy it is to humanize a Nazi.
Seriously.
If they're like,
it's true.
Look at this woman who like grew up in Louisiana and like
is a
like,
farmer, beat up Subaru, Margee Green. It's so perfect.
Chill vibes candidate. Like, yeah, come on.
Wait, one more slogan idea.
Go for it.
You're gonna cum your pants for me.
Okay, I wrote it down. I just wrote it down.
All right.
I will say the last thing, which I'm really not into and I'm having a hard time with right now, but it's, if anyone feels like donating even like a small amount to the campaign, it apparently costs a lot of money to do this. I did not realize what a lot meant.
And you won't be, you're going to have to take time to do this where you won't be able to make money.
Yeah, I'm actually, and that's a thing that I'm like just kind of getting comfortable with talking about, which is that like we're cover cropping the farm for the summer to be able to do this. So people are like, so cool. Like, I'd love to come out and see your farm. And I'm like, no, you may not because it is just cover crop. Yeah. Which is good. Like, we should all be cover cropping. I'm actually being kind of a jerk and I'm cover cropping it with flowers because I still want to be like, which is not a great cover crop, but I do want it to be pretty. Flowers are not a legit cover crop.
What's a cover crop?
Oh my God, yes.
We're talking about soil.
Yeah, soil health. So cover crop is something that you're like intentionally planting to let the soil and like the earth be fallow and like still for a moment. It's like mulching, except like because the soil is a bank of health for plants, but you can like you have to leave it covered, right? You can't be losing carbon to the atmosphere, and you want to keep moisture moving through it. So it doesn't, like, if you were to just mow everything down at your farm and take the summer off and leave like bare earth, it would get covered in weeds and it would lose a lot of like soil health to the sun and the air. But if you're planting something, you're covering it, you're keeping it cool, and then you till it in at the end of the season to add organic matter. And also the best cover crops are usually legumes. So they're fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere into the soil. So you're actually like, you're improving your soil's health. You're not leaving a place for disease and bugs to fester. Like it's just like the best thing that you can do for soil, and everyone should do it. Like you should be rotating cover crops through your farm all the time. We are really bad at it in Louisiana because it means that a piece of your farm isn't financially profitable.
Okay.
They're so good at it up north because they have times of the year where they can't grow.
Right.
So they just like put stuff into cover crop, and then the cover crop freezes and it covers the ground, and then they till it in and they have this like beautiful dark soil. And down here we're just like, just farm it till it's dust. We do. Like I'm guilty of it too. Like it's a system I was taught in, but that is something that we would be prioritizing.
I was
on a
actually
statewide
going to ask
level.
if it was beans, because I think a field of like legumes actually is pretty, but
It's beautiful.
flowers are pretty. And it's got to be helping like bees or something.
It is.
Right?
It's a pollinator habitat. Yeah. And the truth of it is I actually divided it into 4 blocks. So I have a block of sunflowers, a block of cosmos, a block of zinnia, and then I'm actually going after this to do cowpeas on the right side. So there will be legumes.
She's legit.
So how do people donate?
www.greenforagriculture.com. And like I do want to make sure that I'm prioritizing that like people power is the most important thing. But if someone has a couple bucks to throw the way of the campaign, that would be great. We have an office starting on June 15th. Physical space. That's exciting. Yeah. And we'll be doing some canvassing events in the coming weeks.
That office better have some beautiful plants.
It's going to have some bomb house plants.
And if any of our listeners want to go to a watermelon festival, and how should they get in touch with you?
So there's a volunteer form on the website, and yeah, people fill that out, and it drops into a little Google Doc for me, and I get in touch with people via email and say, hey, do you want to go to the Shrimp and Petroleum Festival?
And any other information you want people to know?
I want people to know that, like, as I walk through this process and I try to, like, tell what my strategy, like, what my path to victory is, the thing that I hear over and over again from people who are, like, establishment politicians is that, like, I can't win this election because young people don't vote. And so that's, like, incredibly important for people to hear, that is everyone's perception of us, and that is why they sleep on us, and that is why they do not support candidates who want to do something different, because they think it's a losing bet. And, like, that is their fault, but it's also our fault for not voting. Yeah. And we have to, like, it is exhausting. We have to stay engaged, even when it is not rewarding, even when it doesn't turn out in our favor. We have to keep going.
It'll be very in our favor when we have food and water.
Yeah. And, like, can take care of the people we love with it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.